When we started the band in 1979, we needed to have a name. And since we all either worked or studied in the Sir Charles Tupper Medical Building, the name became obvious. We became the Tupper Band. And of course, when the architects were planning the Tupper Building, they didn't make provision for a band room. But we managed to get access to an area that worked quite well for us, but has then changed its configuration 2 or 3 times since then. Initially, this was the sort of setup that we had, and that worked very well. Then a couple of things happened. A new building was erected next door, and it required access through the space that we'd always rehearsed. And at the same time, the coffee shop next door expanded into the space that we'd been using. So you can see now, let's show you what space there's left in which we have to find some rehearsal space. Here. This was shot during the shutdown. Now imagine it's full of students. Note also there's a number of immovable built-in structures in the area where we used to rehearse. So this is the space we have to cope with every Wednesday afternoon. And first we need to clear the space and get rid of any students who are still there at 4:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. Then we bring in the chairs and we begin to set up, even though people are still walking through the area to get access into the next building, and they continue to do that even during our rehearsal. But finally, we get our space ready, and it's time to start at 5 o'clock. We also finish promptly at 6:15, so that's just an hour and 15 minutes every week. Not too much to get a lot of work done. And then, of course, after we finish, we have to put everything back together again. So that's the rehearsal space. But a band needs a place to keep its music and its instruments and supplies, and normally found in a band room, but we don't have a band room. So we scrounged and found about 5 different nooks and crannies scattered around the building. Here's a plan of the ground floor of the Tupper Building, and in the top left-hand corner, you'll see the place where we rehearse. Next to it, quite close to it, is where we keep the metal cupboard. We use it every rehearsal. It's where we keep current music and small percussion instruments. But you'll see, even though it's nice and handy, it's not always readily accessible. Then not too far away, next to the cash machine, is the cupboard where we keep much of the band music. Further away in the mailroom, we keep the conductor's scores and other bits and pieces. Then there's the larger percussion instruments, and they're right at the other end of the building. And finally, down in the basement, a place we don't use very often now, is a storage area that still has some souvenirs of our bygone activities. So that's how we get all the components of the band room that we currently use. And this is now where we rehearse under the direction of the gentlest, most benevolent and kindly old conductor that we could ever hope to find. But we'll tell you more about that a little later. Now, let me tell you about the next piece we're going to play. It's a piece of music that was released in May 1979 and reached #1 on the Billboard Country Singles chart just 2 months later. The artist was Nova Scotia's own Anne Murray, and the song Shadows in the Moonlight. Now, Anne wasn't a Dalhousie graduate, but her father, James Carson Murray, received his MD from Dalhousie in 1932 and practiced in Spring Hill, Nova Scotia for many years. And 2 of Anne's brothers were also medical graduates at Dalhousie. David was a fellow resident with me, and Hal Murray was in my training program and became a gastroenterologist in New Glasgow. So here's Shadows in the Moonlight, released in 1979, and it was still pretty hot when we recorded it 3 years later in 1982.